everyone, Letty here. Welcome to day 26 of my Christmas in July Crafty series. I'm using Doodlebug's Candy Cane Lane. I'm going to do the July sheet load of cards. I'm going to show you how to cut 2 sheets of 6x6 to make 3 cards. Welcome back everyone. So for hashtag PPP Christmas in July today, I'm using Doodlebug's Candy Cane Lane. I have used this a few times so far in this series. I am just obsessed with this little collection. So I have just a few sheets left. I also brought in the coordinating stamp set to use that We Wish You a Merry Christmas for this collection. I had gotten it from scrapbook.com. It was a freebie at the time. It is still available at scrapbook.com for sale. I also bring in the odds and ends. This is like the ephemera pack from Doodlebug for this collection. Here's what comes in that specific pack. Super cute. And then I also brought in the mini icon stickers because I'm going to use a couple of stickers to add on the insides of my cards because I'm going to have a white mat on the inside of my cards. So this is again the Candy Cane Lane collection by Doodlebug. And today I am going to be doing the July 2023 sheet load of cards. I've already done it once this month, but I wanted to show you how you can cut 2 sheets of 6x6 paper to make 3 cards. And so we'll be doing some cutting guides today. And so I'm going to use 2 sheets of 6x6 and 2 sheets of cardstock, which is 8.5 by 11. These are double-sided papers, and that'll help us mix and match our patterns. Again, making 3 cards from 2 sheets of the 6x6 paper. We're going to be using that sketch for the sheet load. I also brought in some white cardstock mats for the insides of the cards, 4 inches by 5 1/4, and then some sentiment cardstocks, 2 3/4 by 2 1/4. I brought in a few pieces of that ephemera, one to go on each of the fronts of my cards. So let's jump into the actual card making. So I have my cardstock here that I want to cut down first. I'm going to use 2 sheets to do these 3 cards. I'm going to first cut it at 5 1/2 on the 11-inch side just so I can get my card bases. So these are just A2 size card bases. I'm going to cut it one more time on that second sheet. So now I have 3 card bases that I'm going to put aside, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the remaining mats from this piece of cardstock. I'm going to cut it at 3 inches on the smaller side. That's a scrap. Now I'm going to cut them down to 2 1/2 segments. So the final little cardstock mats will be 2 1/2 by 3 inches, and I'm going to have 3 of them from that one little strip. So that's a scrap. These are my 2 scraps. Here are my cardstock mats that go behind my little sentiment. Again, 3 inches by 2 1/2. And it's perfect for those little mats, for the little cardstock sentiments. So let's go ahead and cut the paper. So I'm going to cut these exactly the same way. I am cutting using vertical pictures or images. You're going to rotate it one time where your top is to the right-hand side, and then cut it at 5 1/4. So you'll have those 2 little scraps. Do not get rid of those. You will be needing those. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of my columns that are going to go as far as my mats for the front of my card. So I'm going to start by cutting both of them at 1 3/4. Just like this, 1 3/4. So again, I'm cutting both of them at the same time. That's the larger strip that's on the sketch. The other 2 little panels on this sketch are going to be the same size, but you see here, this one is the larger, the wider one of these panels. So then the last 2, I'm going to cut down at 1 inch. And again, I'm cutting double, so I'm just cutting both sheets at once. My little trimmer can handle it. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut one more at 1 inch. So again, we have 2 segments that are 1 inch, and then the widest one is 1 3/4. So we have 2 small ones, 1 large one, and I do still have 2 scraps of paper. So what I want to do is get one more card out of these 2. So I'm going to pick one, and I'll cut it down to 1 3/4, which is my bigger mat, just like this. And so now all I need are the 2 smaller strips, which are 1 inch. And since this is over 2 inches, I'll have perfect amount of paper to get 2 more 1-inch strips out of that second little scrap. So now I have all of my mats, and I have just a few little scraps left over. Here's what I have so far, but we're going to go ahead and use, you see how we have that little sort of strip that goes horizontally? It calls for 1/2 inch of a strip. I'm going to use this even though it's a little bit wider, just because I have it available. I'm not going to trim it down. I'm going to just go ahead and leave it to 3/4 inch wide, and I'm going to add that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut both of those strips down to 2 3/4 because that's what will fit perfectly along the base of my little sentiment white cardstock. And I'm going to decide on an additional one and cut it down as well. So I'll have 3 of those little strips and then a couple of scraps. Here are my final scraps. The ones on the right can go on the insides of the cards. The other ones are a little bit small. So I'm going to go ahead and fold my card bases in half now that I have all of my paper cut. So this you can do in any which way. You could also just score. If you wanted to just score it in half and then fold and enforce that score line, you could do that as well. So I've gone ahead and folded my card bases. So the next step is I'm going to divide all of my little columns, my paper mats, for each of my 3 cards. So I have different combinations of paper because these are double-sided paper. And so I want to pick 3 different versions of the paper patterns and then mix and match. And so you see here, here's what I've done. I've got all 3 patterns or all 3 cards ready to go. And then I'm also going to mix and match those little smaller strips, but I'll do that off camera. And then what I'll do is I will also glue those little sentiments in just a second. So I do have my cardstock mats that are going to go on the inside, those white mats that are going to go on the inside of my cards. I'm going to glue those together real quick. I've already added them to the insides of my cards. All I did was add some double-sided adhesive to glue those mats on the inside of my cards. Next, I'm going to glue these little mats onto the little cardstock mats that are the same kind of lime green color. And then I'm going to add these little strips right on top of that. So I've already done that off camera as well, just to save us a little bit of time. Here's what these 3 look like. Super, super easy. I just layered them up. I did the exact same thing on all 3. You do notice I did my stamp sentiment to the left-hand side, and that's because I'm going to put an ephemera piece on the right-hand side. And so I wanted to have it kind of off-center. And so the next step is we're going to glue our little column mats. And so I'm going to start with the one that goes to the far left-hand side of the card front, and then I'm going to do the one that's to all the way to the right hand side. So I find that it's easiest if I do the outside mats first, and then I can easily just squeeze in the inside mat very easily right on the inside. And that way I can keep everything very equidistant, very evenly separated. And then the last step is just to glue that little sentiment matted layer right on top, a little bit angled to the left hand side, which is what Alicia, who is Call Me Crafty Owl's sketch, calls for this sheet load. And so again, here's what is a side-by-side comparison of what it looks like. I'm not going to stop there though. I am going to add one additional piece of ephemera onto each card. It looks like that little house is going to be too large, so I'll swap that out in just a second, and you'll see that in my final recap. I'm just auditioning the pieces, trying to decide what I want. I'll go ahead and glue the remaining cards off camera. I'll finish them up and I'll come back for a full recap. Okay, so we have Candy Cane Lane by DOODLEBUG. That was the collection I used today. I used the paper pad, the stamp set, the odds and ends, and some stickers. So I also used Alicia's Call Me Crafty Owl's July 2023 sheet load of cards. I made 3 cards from 2 sheets of 6x6 paper and technically 2 sheets of cardstock. You get 3 cards with very little scraps. I did add my pieces of ephemera, and then I layered on all of my matted sentiments. I did add some stickers on the inside of each of the cards, so I'm going to do a quick little preview of what these look like. These cards are so super easy to make, and they go really fast, especially if you mass assemble them. I'm going to leave Alicia's channel link down below so that way you can get access to this sheet load. So again, I made 3 cards using 2 sheets of 6x6 with the July sheet load with using Candy Cane Lane by DOODLEBUG for hashtag PPP Christmas in July. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this series. Here's a link to my Christmas crafty playlist so you can get even more inspiration for crafty projects. Happy holiday crafting.